Ashley Meredith with Breakbulk, and I'm here this afternoon in Houston at Breakbulk Americas 2014, and we've just finished a Project Cargo case study about the El Segundo refinery project in California.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Maybe you can give us a synopsis of what that project entailed for Chevron.
Yeah, from Chevron, the project deals with the refinery's coker unit, which is actually a core element to the refinery there in El Segundo. That coker helps us process a variety of crudes, which in turn allows us to be able to sell about 20% of the motor vehicle fuel in Southern California and provide about 40% of the jet fuel to LAX.
That's fantastic. So you were replacing those units?
Correct. So the coker unit itself was built in the 60s, and the drums themselves that do the processing were 45 years old at this point in time.
So it was time for a replacement, right?
Yes. Yep. So to maintain that unit operating reliably for many years to come, we opted to purchase brand new coke drums, pull out 6 old drums that were in the plant, and put in 6 brand new coke drums.
Okay, now this was quite a complex transport project, and Big Lift handled the ocean transport of the coke drums from Spain, is that right?
That is correct. We started loading in Spain just before Christmas in 2012, and we carried all 6 coke drums over the ocean, over the Atlantic Ocean, through Panama Canal to LA. And
how long did that take?
About a month, sailing, yeah, just over a month.
Okay, and tell me, did everything go exactly how you had anticipated?
There's always surprises in heavy lift cargo, so you have to anticipate on that. But basically, yes, cargo was safely loaded, safely carried on board of our vessel. The vessel arrived in time in LA, and cargo was offloaded in 2 days, so that went all according to plan.
That's fantastic. And then your company was in charge of the road transport.
Correct.
So how did that go?
It went as planned. We actually spent about 6 months planning the whole operation. Execution took about 3 weeks. So from the time Big Lift delivered, we had a 3-week gap of no work and 3 weeks of transportation. So as Marcel said, there were challenges, unexpected challenges, but the overall execution went as planned.
Now, this was a fairly populated area where the transport, where these coke drums had to be moved through, right? And there were some challenges with electricity, cable, internet. How did you guys address that?
Yeah, we just really got engaged with our contractors on the power side that was Southern California Edison. Initially, our concerns were that we believed we were going to impact 20,000 residents by shutting off their power. By just literally walking every single power line with Edison, asking them to look at alternatives. Edison was actually able to come up with ideas like backup lines. In one case, they ran a new line. At the end of the day, we didn't turn off anybody's power. And that was very critical to us, Chevron. We didn't want to be perceived as bad neighbors there in Southern California.
That is fantastic. I think it really speaks to the communication and organization that's necessary on a big project like this. And also keeping an open mind for alternatives. Because I think you said that they originally had thought that it would be okay to shut down the power, but that was something that was unacceptable
in past
to
practice,
Chevron, or not ideal,
correct.
shall we say, right?
Yeah, in past practice, Edison had moved other stuff where they had typically just shut power off, made the move, and then restored power. Again, we did not want to do that, so that's where we looked at alternatives. One of those alternatives, for example, we actually paid to put bury a line in a new underground duct bank across one of the roads.
That's fantastic. So tell us about, now did these coke drums move at night? Were you required to move at night? How did that work?
We were required to move at night. There was actually 2 legs of the journey. The first leg was on a Monday evening, approximately a mile long, where we took them to a staging area and brought in our second set of transporters that met the California specifications, and that was Wednesday night transport. And the reason we transported on Wednesday is because Chevron had a study done of the highway, and that was the night typically that had the least amount of traffic. So even the selected night of transport was a detail that had to be addressed. So.
Okay, so any lessons learned from this job where you are working together moving forward? Were there things that you came away with that you think you'd apply to projects in the future?
From my perspective, the level of detail that we went in the scheduling is something that I never would have considered before that, but seeing the initial goal and Chevron's goal of incident and injury free, and realizing at the end, because of our planning, and I believe everybody thinks of this project, it was a success because of the planning. That's what I've taken into other projects and other jobs. So I've actually taken the level of detail that Chevron expected and transported that to other jobs for Mammoet.
Good. Marcel, did you come away with something?
For us in the beginning, in the contractual stadium, the Chevron was not involved. So we had a contract with a manufacturer. Only later on Chevron came into the picture, and they had all additional requirements because they considered this as a critical shipment, which made it more interesting also for us to meet their requirements. But I think that we have a long-term relationship with Chevron, and I think we met all the requirements so that the shipment was done as we should do it.
Good. That's great. How about you?
Yeah, I felt there was a lot of lessons learned. For example, just working in a tight environment like that, just being open to alternatives. For example, we ended up using a public marina. At first, people thought, well, how are you going to even run that by a city? We came up with a small animation, showed it to people. At first, they kind of said, were you really thinking about this? But in general, people started adopting that was a possibility. Then just engaging everybody, like the Edisons, and explaining to them, look, this is really a little bit different, so you really have to work with the communities. We have to really mitigate everything. And I think we talked about some of the wins. We had a hotline set up. We actually only took 3 calls on that hotline during the move. That were 3 complaints. We actually took it seriously. Anthony looked at, in one case, ways to mitigate noise, and we actually called those people back and said, look, this is what we did. And then they said thanks, and then we, in the next move, we actually had no issues on the
That's
second and third
fantastic.
moves.
That's great community relations. Well, I want to thank the 3 of you for coming and sharing your experience on this big job with everyone here at Breakbulk.